Through firsthand experience, I learned that Mexico does not allow you through security with metal crochet hooks. They unrolled the hook case and I was like, hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Courtney. I'm a size inclusive crochet designer and today I'm here to tell you about how to travel with your crochet projects. If you've ever hopped on a plane or a train or in a bus or in a car or with a fox or in a box with your crochet project, you'll know that there's some things to consider. I'm going to run you through all the things to consider no matter how you're traveling, and then we're going to hop into plane specific, air travel specific guidelines for you to consider when bringing your crochet along on a trip. I want to start with a little disclaimer. You are still responsible for determining if you are allowed to bring things on these trips or not. I am just here to tell you everything that I know because I've done extensive traveling with and without my crocheting. So let's first talk about ground travel, or things that apply to all types of travel. The first is if you are working from a pattern, make sure that you have the pattern available to you offline. So download it to your device, print it off. I don't really love printing patterns, but in this case, it might be a good idea. Or what I like to do is I take screenshots on my device. So that way I know that it's in my camera roll. Even if for some reason the download didn't work or I can't locate it on my phone, I have screenshots of what I need to know in order to work on that project while my phone is out of service or in airplane mode. Okay, now let's look at what kinds of projects we should be bringing with us on the road. We want something relatively small, right? No matter where we're going on the road, whether it's in a car or on a plane, we are limited on space when traveling more than when we're at home. So maybe your temperature blanket or your queen size Afghan is just like not the right project to be bringing on the plane with you, or to be bringing when you're passenger princessing on a road trip. In addition to the project being small, it should probably be something relatively easy, right? We're going to be distracted by our trip. We're going to be distracted if we're in a car, we're going to be distracted if we're in a plane or on the beach, wherever we end up. So something easy, like this might not be the time for you to be doing that like lace color work, raglan sweater. You might want to pick like a straight scarf or a beanie, or maybe get the sweater that you're working on to the underarm so that you're just working on the body on your trip. I also recommend a lighter weight piece, and here's why. Because with lighter weight pieces, we get more yarn per square inch of space in our packing, right? So we could bring like 6 skeins of bulky yarn and fly through that in a couple of days, but maybe only 1 or 2 skeins of DK weight or fingering weight in the same amount of time, because there's so much more yarn in one ball. But that one ball is still taking up about the same space in our bags. Then you want to make sure that you pack a crochet hook that gets you gauge on this project. I also recommend bringing the crochet hook one size larger and one size smaller than the hook that you initially got gauge with, because when we're on vacation, we're relaxed, we've had a margarita, we're chilling, our tension might loosen up a little bit, or that humid weather in Mexico might tighten up those stitches a little bit. In addition to your hook or hooks, you're also going to want any notions that you need for your project. So things like stitch markers, end weavers, snips. We'll talk more about snips in the plane section. Anything like that, a measuring tape so that you can check your gauge as you're going. Anything like that, you want to make sure that it is packed. You don't need to pack your whole collection of stitch markers though, because again, space is limited. We're just bringing the essentials. As for packing your project, you definitely want to put everything that you need into one project bag, in my humble opinion. And I think it's a good idea to bring a project bag that is more travel resistant. So something that maybe isn't white, something that maybe is a little bit more weather or waterproof, and something that is definitely washable. If we're getting it in the beach, in the sand, and we're putting it down at the airport, we want to make sure that we can put that thing in the machine wash on high heat so that it will kill off anything that it picked up at the airport. All right, now it's time to talk about airports and airplane travel with our crochet and knitting. And I need to disclaim again that I am not the be-all, end-all authority for the regulations in every country and every airline around the world as to what is allowed on a plane when it comes to your crafting supplies. So you need to do research based on where you're flying from and where you're flying to, as well as any places where you might be laying over, because sometimes they will make you go through security again in those layover points. But I digress. Here are the things that I think you should consider and as much knowledge as I have on the subject. So the first thing to consider is, since most of us travel with only a carry-on bag these days, and obviously we want to be crocheting or knitting on the actual plane if we can, we want to make sure that our project is small enough to fit in our carry-on bag. We talked about this before already, but picking a project that isn't that queen size Afghan is probably a better choice for a trip. We want something small and compact that fits in our tiny carry-on allowance. Now, let's talk specifically about our crafting tools, crafting supplies that are and are not allowed on planes. So I am Canadian. The majority of the flying that I do is within Canada, or I'm leaving Canada and entering another country. I know within Canada, I can travel with my crochet hooks and it's not a problem. I can travel with metal, wood, plastic. None of them are an issue. We are allowed to travel with crochet hooks in Canada. The same goes for the States. So I could fly from Canada to the US and back, and I would have no problem traveling with my crochet hooks. That being said, it is still the person who is working security that day's job, and they get the final say. So there's always going to be a risk that you catch somebody on a wrong day, or they have the wrong information, or they think your crochet hook looks too scary. They'll take it. I have also flown to and from Mexico a number of times in the last few years with my crocheting. And through firsthand experience, I learned that Mexico does not allow you through security with metal crochet hooks. Thankfully, at the time, I had all my wooden Furls streamline hooks in one case together with a couple of metal hooks in there with them. They unrolled the hook case and I was like, they're going to take all my Furls hooks. And I had like $400 worth of Furls hooks and I was like, please God, no, don't take my hooks. But they just took the metal ones. That's not to say, because from what I've seen, the Mexican airline regulations are a little gray when it comes to knitting and crochet hooks. Sometimes they will take the metal ones, and it boils down to that gate person or that security person that you have that day. So if you don't want to take the risk and you don't want to risk your $400 worth of Furls streamline hooks, check them in your checked bag. I can't stress this enough. My life flashed before my eyes that day. I really, really thought that they were gone. But what I did while in Mexico, because I had a layover in Mexico, so it was on that layover where they tried to take them. I was on my way down. Anyways, what I did while in Mexico was I bought a Tupperware container and I put my hooks in that for them to be in my checked bag on the trip back, because obviously crochet hooks can be pretty fragile, especially when we're talking about wooden ones, and I didn't want them to break. So I folded them up with like paper towel and newspaper and stuff and put them in a Tupperware container and then put them in the center of my checked bag, and they all made it back safely. So some countries allow them, some don't, some airlines do, some don't. You need to do your research and make sure that you're armed with that information as well too, because if the security agent is saying, no, I'm taking these wooden crochet hooks, and you know for sure that they are allowed in that country and on that airline, then you can just be like, can you like double check with one of your coworkers or your supervisor, because I've flown with these before and I checked the regulations and I'm allowed to. Stand your ground a little bit. Don't be a Karen, but like stand your ground a little bit. Protect those crochet hooks, protect your crafting supplies. So the next thing to talk about beyond crochet hooks and knitting needles that we often have to travel with when we're knitting and crocheting is scissors. A lot of countries, understandably, do not allow any passengers to board with any types of scissors or blades. Completely get it. Again, this varies from country to country and airline to airline. Within Canada, I know that I can travel with my little crafting scissors, because I think the regulation is they have to be less than like 3 or 4 inches or something, which I mean, I can't imagine traveling with scissors that are 4 inches. That's crazy. But I know that I can travel safely with these. If I don't have to though, I don't bring them because I don't want to risk it. I don't want anybody looking at me sideways. So if I don't have to, I won't. For example, if I'm going to visit my family out in BC, I know they have scissors. I don't need to bring mine. I can manage for the 4 hours on the plane without scissors. I'll use their scissors when I get there. Okay, now let's talk about yarn. If we're bringing yarn with us, and especially if it's a longer trip and we want to bring a lot of yarn, I, in the past, have used vacuum sealed bags and put them in my checked bag. And looking back, I'm like, you know what? They could have exploded, especially in the thin air, and like blown up my suitcase, but they didn't. So use vacuum seal bags to vacuum seal your yarn for more yarn space, but make sure that they're high quality vacuum seal bags so that they don't explode in the changing pressures of the airplane. And make sure you're not overfilling your suitcase so that if they do happen to pop, they're not going to completely blow up the zipper on your suitcase. And the last thing you can do if you want to knit or crochet while you're traveling is to leave all your projects at home and look up where the local yarn store, the local crafting store is wherever you're traveling to. Crafting and yarning is pretty universal around the world, and you could just pick up a hook and some yarn at a local yarn store when you reach your destination, and then hopefully the project is small enough that you finish it on vacation, or if not, you can bring the project home with you. You may or may not have to leave that crochet hook or knitting needle set behind though. Because yarn makes a great souvenir, and what better souvenir than yarn from the place that you traveled to and a project that you made while you were in that place with the yarn that you bought in that place and brought home with you. I think that's pretty cool. If you have any travel related crochet and knitting tips, pop them in the comments below. Ask me any questions that I might not have answered about traveling with your knitting and crocheting today. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for future educational crochet content. Thank you so much for watching. Happy crocheting and happy traveling.